So the F350, an American icon, but today we're going to take a look at everything wrong with it.
You found a F-truck, I believe.
New project car starts here. So if you can see, this tyre is dry rotted to hell. Look at that. All right, I've just noticed something. There's no battery terminals. The sump plug is literally right on top of the cross member, so now it's just pissing out oil everywhere. It's a decent drive home. We've got 2 hours to go basically, so hopefully we get through all this. I don't know if I was going to die of carbon monoxide poisoning or the heat. But,
how's the aircon in the F-truck?
I'm wrecked. I'm just going to go inside and sit in front of the aircon for the next hour. So many of you would have seen that we picked up a big old F350 with a car carrying bed on the back. It's to tow our project cars around. So, you know, easiest thing to tow a race car around is a purpose-built tow truck. This one's in not too bad a condition, but it does have some pretty average points. So let's start looking at some of the things that is actually wrong with this. First of all, you know, you would have seen the tyres. So these are just, this is one of the better ones and it's terrible. I think this is a retread that's almost bursting at the seams here. So, and that's one of the better ones. So if that's one of the better ones, you can imagine what the bad ones look like. Next detracting point is probably the bed. Now you can see this is actually a completely smooth surface, so especially when we've got slick tyres in that too, it's, you know, there's not much, nothing to give much resistance or friction to be able to drive the car up here, and also to stop it from bouncing around a bit. It's a bit too smooth, so we need to get checker plate or something on here like that, so we're going to look at that. Also, there's someone removed the helper spring from here, so the leaf springs are actually, you know, this car, for this to carry the load of the car on top here, and they've removed the actual helper spring for that extra load carrying capability. It's really going to affect our carrying cars on here, so we're going to rectify that somehow with something. Also, just how this is reinforced, it's not too bad, but I'd like to see some of the reinforcements that are coming out from the actual frame out to here. So we need to put in some kind of supports to go weld in from those where they weld to the actual frame and the chassis all the way out to here, just to triangulate it a bit more, because at the moment it's almost like a big T sort of shaped box, so we want to triangulate some of those in there. So we've got the winch. Winch works, but the remotes don't work. There's no external wires, so we have to fix all that. The ramps down here, although they look pretty good, well, they don't look that good actually, to be honest. They do work, but they're a bit narrow. I have a Project Redline on here just to make sure it actually fits, and it only runs just on this part of the ramps, and the ramps aren't movable or anything, so I'm going to probably look at remaking some of these ramps. All of this is also made out of pretty thick steel, so it just adds to the weight, so trying to take as much weight out of the bed as I possibly can to keep the weight of the truck down, because weight means you need more power to move it. Using more throttle to move it means using more fuel, so we want it to be as fuel economy on target as we can. One of the last things back here is the diff, so it's got a big old, you won't be able to see it under there probably unless you crawl right in there, but it's got a big old Dana 70 in it, and it's got 4, 5, 6 diff gears. Now this thing's got a 4-speed manual transmission, however the the fourth gear is still 1-to-1. There's no overdrive, so no overdrive with these diff gears means with this engine currently, the 4, 5, 6 diff gears, we're screaming at about 3,000 RPM at 100 Ks or 3,300 RPM at 110. So it is annihilating through fuel. So we've got to fix the diff gears in it as well, because we're going to retain this engine and trans for very short term to make sure we get the car on the road. But that just means we've got to do something about the diff gears in the meantime. So that pretty much takes care of back here. Now if we start looking at some of the bed, you can see down here there's a little bit of rust here. It's not too bad, so I mean we can, it's actually, you know, compared to a lot of these F trucks, it's actually pretty good. So I think if we cut out some of that, we'll be right. Again, a little bit up here, a tiny bit in these drip rails. Now, I'm not a huge fan of these drip rails. I reckon they sort of date the car. You look at most modern cars, and no modern car has this, so I might just actually cut these off and cut them totally out of here. The reason why we thought the door handles were a bit dicky like an old XD XE Falcon was there should be a nylon bush here on the striker, and there's nothing, so it's not locating the door onto the lock probably, which is why they're not shutting properly. Further on in here, these seats are like a bloody giant trampoline, so they don't offer much in the way of support, so I've got to do something about, I wouldn't mind maybe keeping the bench, but we've got to do something about that. The other week when I was in here, mysteriously the heater and fan unit let all the smoke out. It made some kind of weird noise, and then smoke just started pouring out of it, so I think that's seen better days, so we'll have to look at replacing that. And the speedo cable doesn't really work all the time into the dash, so again, just another thing we're going to have to look at fixing. And also these antique door trims look great, but they're probably not ideal. There's no armrest either, which is a total pain, and there's no modern things that you take for granted, like cup holders and stuff like that too. So there's probably enough for in there. The rest of the terrible stuff, such as this, has got to be fixed. You know, the grill's a bit untidy. I'm not so much worried about some of the cosmetic stuff, as long as it's neat and it's rust free. The panel over here, you'll see again, there's even more holes welded in here. But again, I mean, you can see now the paint here is actually like giant chunks of it are peeling off. So we've got to fix those. Only other thing I missed from the back before was a handbrake. Is average is probably the best word to describe it. Seems to work like Six Panther. 60% of the time it works all the time. And then we come in here, and this is where it gets really lovely, because I don't even know where to start with some of this. This is some of the most incredibly borderline terrible wiring I've ever seen in my life. So there's not much of it. So you would think when there's not much of it, like to install the LPG lock off or to run the coil pack and the distributor over here, that it'd be pretty easy to group all those wires together and tape them up and put them in some conduit. But no, we'll just, whoever had this car last to do all this work just decided that, I mean, basically it looks like they picked a pile of wires up off the ground and just threw them in the engine bay, and they stuck in place. So we've got to fix all that. I'm sure there's leaks from the exhaust. I'm sure there's leaks from the rocker cover gaskets as well. Not sure if there's any leaks from front and rear main seal, but we'll investigate those as well. I definitely know there's a leak from the carby, the LPG throttle body there, because you can just smell it at idle, and it really struggles to start cold. Eventually does, and it pretty much doesn't start when it's hot. So whether this is the gas carby or the gas mixer that needs work, we'll look into that. But again, I might not really worry about that, because got something pretty special planned for the car anyway. So we've got some tricks in store for this thing definitely coming up. So I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, let me have a look at my list here. It's a long list of stuff I need to get for it, but that's pretty much it. I think the only other thing I mentioned was didn't mention was the door channels. There's no rubber. I think the rats and mice have eaten those away, so they're all gone. So that's pretty much where we sit with this big bad boy at the moment. We've got to do a bit of work, granted, there's definitely a bit of work in there, but first things first, we need to make a list and order all these parts to do the job. So that's where we're going to leave it today. We'll check back into us next time when hopefully we've completed our shopping list of all the little bibs and bobs that we need, and we'll run through them all and give you a real insight on what we're actually going to do with this project coming up. Until then, see you later.
And like always, support the people who support us.